Okay. Good evening. I think we can start if we can have some silence behind there. So I can't really say TGIF because for the startup world, I think there's no weekend. People are working all week and all day and all night. So happy to have you all here spending your Friday evening with IAN and BHIVE. We have a couple of partners. We have Kyron Global, we have Your Story, and we have Yes Bank, IAN's banking partner. We'd like to thank them as well. IAN, Indian Angel Network, is India's largest and one of the oldest networks in India of angels. We have about 450 angels on our platform. We have marquee investors like Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan and Mr. Rajan Anandan. But apart from that, what we have is we have young serial entrepreneurs who made it big, who want to give back to the ecosystem. So we have here Mr. Venkat Raju and Mr. Tony Thomas. You'll meet them, young serial entrepreneurs who made it, who want to give back to the ecosystem. They not just invest money, they're angel investors. More than that, they provide mentorship, they provide guidance. It's not just about money. That's the amazing part, that the entrepreneurs who come to our network, they get access to our 450 investors, and it's not just money, it's much more than money. So we also are sector agnostic. We invest in all sectors and in about 10 countries. And we currently have about 120 companies in our portfolio. Average size is 2 to 4 crores is what we invest in. Most of our investors, if you ask me, what do they look for, right? I would say they look for the team. Has to be a strong team. Most of them have told me we'll back a B-type idea backed by an A-type team instead of backing an A-type idea backed by a B-type team. So that's kind of the summary. I won't take any more time. We have Yes Bank, our banking partner. So I'd like to call upon Mr. Srijit Nair, if he can say a few words.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to for the partnership we have started at Chat and this being the first such event for out of the I think series of 12 such events which we are planning together. And from the bank side, we for everybody's reference, we are the fifth largest private sector bank in the country now, and we were also at this stage of a startup when we started in 2004. So we are the only greenfield bank which we started from scratch, and we have brought it up to such levels where we became the fifth largest private sector bank of the country. And we are we feel proud of being the professionals bank of the country. And so we in a sense we have been through your phase of startup. So we understand the pains and the perils of conceptualizing a banking idea which we had. The MD and CEO, Mr. Rana Kapoor, had conceived in his mind. But at the end of the day, conception is not enough. Execution is what matters. And that's why we are proud of. We have executed the entire idea, and every day of our life, we at the bank, we are trying to conceive new solutions, new products, and seeing how we can help the industry in terms of giving them solutions which will meet their needs and help them grow in their life cycle. So just touching upon few things, we also have a program called Yes Head Startup, where we believe, in terms of helping the startups in the entire life cycle from inception, helping them helping them in getting the licenses what are required, mentorship which is required, helping them find investors, helping them with all the banking solutions. At the end of the day, your whatever business model you would come up with, there will be a requirement of cash management in terms of getting the receivables for your business or for your stakeholders and getting payments for your customers. So from that perspective, we are providing holistic banking solutions to startups. We have got a separate vertical which handles all the startup related businesses, and we believe that startups are the future. So you are innovating, you are ideating, and we would like to partner startups in that growth. So, as I mentioned, we, as a bank also, we have been conceiving thoughts. We have been in the forefront in terms of new technologies which are coming into play. When RBI had in 2005-6, when they had come up with requirement of dual factor authentication for payments from a bank account. We were the pioneers to come up with dual factor authentication. We were the pioneers to come up with public key infrastructure based encryption for payments. We were the pioneers to get biometric for authentication for payments. When IMPS, Immediate Payment Service, was launched by NPCI, we were again on the forefront in terms of being the bank who can be experimented on this particular platform. And now we entire domestic money transfer platform of ours is based on the IMPS model, and we are one of the top 5 banks who handle IMPS remittances in the country. So that's where where we partner with regulators, we partner and try to find solutions. Another one key thing which I would like to touch upon. Again, a business problem comes on the table from a customer of ours, like for example Snapdeal. I would like to take that example and just want to sort of put a thought that at the end of the day, you're trying to find a solution which is going to sort of address a pain point of the customer. So, Snapdeal had a unique problem wherein they had their refunds of cash on deliveries, which are taking a lot of time. In terms of there's sort of 3 to 4 days of delays in payment of refunds for the cash on delivery. So we sat with their teams, tried to understand why that is happening, whether why is that in a transaction where you either use an online debit card or a credit card, you are able to do a refund faster, but whereas in a cash on delivery where the customer is paying cash, you're not able to refund faster. So we conceived a product called API banking with them, and the concept is very simple. So finally, at the end of the day, for making a payment, you need a bank account. So they were able to take the customer's bank account through an online mode and initiate a payment sitting in the warehouse. So whenever you are requesting a refund from for Snapdeal or any e-commerce site, the person will come and pick up the good from your place. It takes to the warehouse. They will see whether the good is fine, and then from the warehouse in their app, they click a button and it makes a payment through IMPS in 7 seconds to the bank account of the customer. So it's a wow experience for Snapdeal's customer. But at the end of the day, we conceived a solution with them on APIs. So the point is, conceptualization definitely is the key. You have to identify what is the pain point of your customer, find a problem, find the solution, and it's not that one size fits all. So you have to customize your solutions. So at the end of the day, being a small bank, we are able to customize solutions for large corporates to startups, the entire value chain, entire chain. So that's where we excel in. And so I will not take much of your time. I know I'm the odd one out in all the the sort of attire which I am in. So I didn't know that it was supposed to be an informal attire. So I'll not take much of your time, and I think we'll be happy to hear Venkat's views on conceptualization of product and how to make it a minimum viable product, and definitely Tony's views on how to sort of again what thoughts come into play when you are defining an MVP product. Thanks.
Thanks, Srijit. So now we have Mr. Venkat Raju. I don't know where to start, and if I start, I won't be able to stop. So I'll keep it brief. Yeah, he's a Wall Street technology exec. He's CEO of Kyron Global currently. He's an angel investor, one of the most sought after in Bangalore. Right? When Mr. Venkat Raju leads, people just follow, put in their money saying, oh, he knows what he's doing. And more than anything, he's a great mentor. I've heard this from many of our entrepreneurs that if he's investing, please get him to invest in our startup, right? So that's he's been a serial entrepreneur from the Bay Area, and he's also been a CTO of Fortune 500 companies in US and UK. So I can't, I would like to go on and on, but we are stuck for time. So Mr. Venkat Raju here.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yes. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Sarita, for the kind words. And in fact, I was still remembering the earlier introduction about IIN, where you talked about investors like Chris, and then you mentioned serial entrepreneurs, young serial entrepreneurs, and you mentioned my name. So, yes, serial entrepreneur perhaps, but I certainly will take the young. Thank you. Okay, so I want to make this into a very informal conversation. As you can see, I didn't put together a formal presentation here. I jotted down few thoughts that I wanted to talk about. I believe I have about 45 to 50 minutes. What I would like to do is probably use half the time and use the rest of the time in Q&A, so that the conversation is much more relevant and contextual, if I may. Before I start, can I have a quick show of hands in terms of how many of you are aspiring entrepreneurs? That means you haven't started yet. Okay. How many of you are entrepreneurs of product companies still looking for an MVP? Okay. How many of you are in a post-MVP stage looking for product market fit? Okay, I see some overlaps there as well. And that's understandable too. So this conversation is about for people like me, normal mortals. If any of you are like Steve Jobs, who can conceive a product, ignore it completely in the market, knowing it's going to succeed, genius like that, this is not for you. So with that said, let me begin by stating few things. I do not have a theoretical underpinning or a background in product management. What I'm going to say is much more of practical experiences as an entrepreneur before, having run product management before, much before the days of these jazzy terms like product market fit, etc. But we used to follow these practices, not necessarily knowing the terms, but these terms certainly help in structuring a conversation. So I want to make sure I am coming across as more a practitioner. So some of the things I'm going to say may or may not jive with some of the theoretical things that you would see in a book, for example. Okay, so I wanted to set the context there. Okay, so where do you start? As I was having an initial conversation here, somebody was talking about how do I say no to a founder who is passionate. He believes that it is the greatest idea out there and still say no. And let me use that as a context as somebody embarks on a journey. You believe you have the greatest product or the greatest concept and you're going to be the next big thing after sliced bread. And the conversations you would like to have or the feedback you would like to have is, okay, when can I sign up? I am all excited. Two, possibly in the other extreme, your baby is ugly. And the challenge is to navigate from this extreme kind of feedback and not be totally going wild and crazy based on the first reaction and not be totally disappointed by the other reaction, and try to understand and try to garner feedback to proceed forward. So again, I want to set that as a context because you're going to hear the extremes, but the trick is to figure out where the market opportunity is, and perhaps it's lying somewhere in the middle. Okay, that's very important to keep in mind. So the way I see it, so some of you would be very, very young folks who have got a brilliant idea. You just maybe dropped out of college or quit your job and want to go forward with that. Or somebody else, a insightful consumer who thinks, okay, I have this great perspective and I can turn, if I can come up with a product, it's going to be a world beater, to some seasoned professional having worked 20 plus years. Oh, I have this strong domain knowledge. I see these gaps in this industry. I can come up with a product. So you can see a variety of players, different age groups, different contexts, but they are all trying to do a startup. And the question is, how do you turn this idea, this passion, this concept into something that is meaningful? Meaningful, when we say, is a product, even an intangible service. For the sake of argument, I'm going to continue to use the word product. And it is a true product only when your end customer says so. An end customer is able to consume it as a service or whichever way and willing to pay for it. So there's a long journey from your idea and concept to getting a customer to say, yes, indeed, it is a product, useful product, and I'm willing to pay for it. So that's the journey we are talking about, at least for the MVP stage. And how do you go about it, turning this? So one approach could be, those of you who've done your master's or PhD or something, when you do a research, you come up with a thesis, a hypothesis, then you do the documentation, the articulation, the research, and so on and so forth to go and prove it in a convincing fashion to stakeholders here. You're probably going through a similar journey in a product startup where you need to go through these steps. Perhaps not necessarily with the same kind of rigor or the same kind of methodology, but at a high level, that's exactly what you're doing, is selling your thesis to your stakeholders and credibly, because ultimately they are the ultimate decision makers here. Now let us talk about you perceive a problem, you are coming up what you think is a product. Sometimes all it is just a solution, meaning there is a problem there for a narrow slice of the population, and you have come and done a custom solution for them, and that's useful for them, but perhaps it is not necessarily a needed solution for the vast majority of the people. In that case, yes, it's been a useful exercise, but you don't have a product. So it is very, very critical to understand the difference between a solution for 1, 2, even 10 people versus a true product that has a market. Okay, so that's one perspective. The second one to understand is, when you go and ask someone, it is very important to differentiate between a need and a want. The way to figure that out is, okay, do you have this problem? Yes. If I come up with a solution like this, would you take it? Absolutely. Would you be willing to pay for it? Maybe, perhaps not. So that should give you pause. The answer is yes, I will pay for it. Okay, how much will you pay for it? Oh, I will pay for it if it's at $10. And that should also give you an idea that if your cost of development, production, distribution, everything is going to be at least $15, then at least perhaps the market is not quite there yet. So these are like some initial readouts you can do. And depending on what the product is, and again, there is tons of literature in terms of how you go and do a MVP. But again, from a practical perspective, it also always depends on what kind of product you're building. If you are doing a web application, consumer application, then you probably want to create a landing page and then like show what is possible and go out and seek feedback and input. And the kind of responses you're going to get is going to be very, very meaningful. And if it's going to be only meaningful when you have really thought through the questionnaire. So I'll give you an example. I go to a restaurant, order, have a nice meal. At the end of the meal, the waiter walks up and says, "How was the service, sir?" Good. That is not a good question. The real good question is, "Sir, how could I made your experience better?" I'm likely to give much more meaningful feedback. So spend a lot of time in thinking through the questioning because those are the insights that you want, especially at the start of this journey that you are going into towards identifying the MVP, if you will. It also depends on the type of product, as I said, whether it's a web application, you have your own data inputs. If it is a mobile app, again, there are different metrics and different approaches towards getting that. If you're building a widget, for example, you can have a messaging campaign, marketing campaign, get feedback saying, "I am planning to launch this widget through Kickstarter. Would you sign up?" The number of signups that you can see for a perceived price should give you an idea about, is this a viable thing or not? So I'm just trying to make sure you understand how you approach MVP depends on, are you building a widget or a mobile app or a B2B SaaS application? Each one of them has their own kind of questionnaire feedback mechanism, and it is very, very important to understand what that is right for you, okay? The other misnomer, MVP, some people think about various things, most valuable product. No, it is minimum viable product. And again, even the most sophisticated folks, some of them I've seen, they associate product with just features and functionality. Yes, features and functionality is important. The minimum amount of features that is going to get the most learning for you is absolutely critical. But MVP for me, features and functionality is not sufficient. MVP is also about the first go-to-market step, the first business model. I'm not looking for finalized business model, but understanding the pricing. What is the rough pricing here? What is the distribution possibilities? At a minimum level, you need to have that kind of understanding, and which I call, people use the word validated learning. And that's an important phrase to take here. Validated learning. Validated meaning it has been put through the process, getting real inputs validated by people who are aware of it, likely to be customers. And learnings is obviously insights. So that means you have truly understood what the feedback was, not just what literally they said, what they meant by it. And that is very, very important. And my recommendation to all of you in this journey is take this validated learning seriously in the context of your business, your product, etc. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say in terms of from the ideation stage getting to MVP. And this is very, very critical. And we all have been doing this perhaps subconsciously or without being aware of that. But if you put some rigor and discipline in terms of how you're approaching this, what are the right questions, who are you asking, and so on and so forth. Again, let me go back. So that means even the biggest naysayer, your baby is ugly, the questions to ask is, perhaps let me go find somebody else, or are there enough people who are going to say the baby is not ugly, but perhaps if the baby were to have this, the baby is passable, and so on and so forth. The trick is to find what is that, okay? But again, don't go crazy by somebody saying this is the best beautiful baby there is, and go ahead and like start spending money because that opinion may not be true either. So it is very important to understand in the spectrum how best to proceed forward and really understand what is truly MVP. Okay. Okay. MVP to product market fit. So product market fit is again a very loaded term, means different things to very different people. Let me give you my definition. It is always contextual. So that means we spend some time about the product discussing what it is. Let's spend some time in terms of the market. So a fit for a market is based on your definition of what that market is. Market is in multiple dimensions, by geography, by demographic, by customer segment, and so on and so forth. So that means if I define my market as Southeast Asia, and I seem to have some traction in Indonesia, does not necessarily mean I gotten a fit for the Southeast Asia, because the nuances for selling and marketing in Thailand is going to be very different compared to Singapore and so on and so forth. Again, so all I can say is, if I am getting sufficient traction in Indonesia, you can at best say, I probably have a market fit for Indonesia. Let me go and find out if it is true in Thailand and what kind of changes I have to make. So it's very important to understand that. Second is demographic. So that means I have a consumer product. It is selling great with the female population 18 to 25 does not necessarily mean it's going to sell equally well for the male population in the same age segment, in the same income bracket, etc. Again, it's very important when you're testing your hypothesis and when you're defining the market, you truly understand what the market is across different segments, different geographies, and so on and so forth. And until that point of time, you don't really have a fit. So it's very important to understand what you mean by market and then what you mean by fit. Now, there are different kind of metrics people associate. If it is a B2B product, okay, you have 6 large referenceable customers who stand behind you, and these customers are a good sample for the market you're going after. Or if it's a B2C product, 40% of the people are saying absolutely yes, and you have a questionnaire that says, okay, what happens if I suddenly decide to discontinue the product or decide to increase the product? And if you see a massive reaction to that, you know the product is there. But the point is, it's less important what the metrics are. Is it 40%? It's 6 reference customers. But again, just as I mentioned before, it is very important to devise questionnaires, strategies to get feedback on the so-called market fit as it applies to the domain you are operating in and the product that you are operating in. In terms of other things that you want to do, try and address the most critical, riskiest part when it comes to identifying product market fit. Because most of the time, the product that you can develop is mostly under your control. The things are around distribution. What is the right channel strategy? Who are the right partners? How do I sell into this market? These are kind of out of your control. A good part of the product market fit experiment is also about testing out those distribution and other factors outside of your control. In fact, I would say they are probably a lot more important than things under your control, which you can always fix at a later time. Because if you embark on a strategy where you feel, oh, the product is good, I'm getting good traction, oh, here comes Indonesia, and I'm establishing a massive infrastructure to sell into Southeast Asia, and it could completely backfire, and that's not a good end. The other thing to see is when you're really looking at a market, look at the current needs and foresee the future needs, a little bit of Steve Jobs, if you will, in terms of crafting together something. The other way to see that is, when people talk about this, and I did focus on geography, demographics, customer segments, etc. Another way of doing it is, I have this minimum set of features. I am going to use the same feature across multiple geographies to test out the thesis. And you can do that because that could be a low-hanging fruit saying, for this feature functionality set at this price, there are enough customers. Then you really look at the market and saying, if that size of the market is not good enough for your business, then you say, I need to expand the market. So that means I need to bring in the male gender into this mix. What kind of extra incremental work that I have to do in terms of expanding the market to reach that male segment? And if I were to do that, how many people will sign up? So that's another kind of computation that you would do. Then you really go into price discovery. That means if I'm selling this at $100 and my size is so much, if, for example, it drops to $90, if it drops to $80, so these are different experiments that you do by features, by price variants, and so on and so forth. A combination of all these experiments, as I would call, because you are still not in a full-fledged business rollout, because I would strongly encourage you run as many experiments as possible. Do as much A/B testing as possible. Get all the data before you can say, I got a product market fit the way I have defined what the market is. Okay? Now, is product market fit ever a constant? Because markets keep changing, new competition come, there are disruptors coming, although you may think you're a disruptor. So that means it's a continuous evolving thing. So that means you need to put together a feedback control loop process for continuously understanding what's happening and so that you can make some changes. So finally, this is my own definition of true product market fit. And I will end it with this. You have reached product market fit when there is a pull from the market for your product. You are no longer marketing or selling, but there is like the market is pulling, asking for your product, need to have it regardless of what the price is. That is my definition of product market fit. Okay? So with that, let me end and open it up for questions.
Hello, good evening, sir. This is Deepak Yadav from Viability Product. Actually, my question is about what you said. I just want to approach you. How should I approach you to be my mentor? I don't know. Actually, whatever you are just explaining, I can get if you become my mentor.
Okay, let's take this conversation offline. I can tell you what drives me. So when I was in the Bay Area, I watched with some amazement and a little jealousy about how the Israeli diaspora was helping product startups from Israel become large corporations. I told myself I should do my little part when I move back to India, and I've done so in the last 5 years or so. And I put my mouth where, walk the talk, if you will. I do investments and time. But again, it's a bandwidth issue, and I also make sure that I get involved only where I believe I can add value, because I know what I don't know. So, but we can certainly take this offline.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hello. So I was also a part of the discussion yesterday, which was concentrating on sales for startup. So we did understand that a lot of products are, we think a lot to make the product world class and stuff, but we never think of how to sell it. So I think you started your talk from there. So let's say if I have a budget for the next year where my product is going to get designed, ideally in percentages, what do you think should be put across for marketing and sales?
Depends on the stage of the product, where your business is and where you are. If you believe that you already have a MVP, I don't know.
Okay.
What stage are you?
Not yet. So
okay. So in that case, I would put most of the money in the experimentation. That means put yourself, go out, get feedback before you even start putting a lot of money in product development.
Right.
I would rather spend more time prototyping, POCs, pilots, A/B testing, what ifs. Get the collective feedback before you spend too much money on development.
So before you spend even on the actual products, it should work on pen and paper and prototypes.
You can do. It also depends on what type of product you are. So, for example, I've seen very successful. You put a facade out there, and behind the scenes, there's a lot of manual work. But would you buy this and kind of engagement?
Yeah.
But then, having said that, I also believe in there are some highly disruptive technologies, high IP, and you need to invest in that, and that by itself is going to create some value. But that is different. It all depends on context.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, good evening, sir. I'm Radhika. My question is on a product market fit, which I'm trying to do. So what problem I'm facing right now is I have a questionnaire, but finding the target people who will honestly give feedback to a startup is very difficult, and hiring a market research company to understand the demographics and
Right.
is too costly at this stage.
And perhaps not very effective. You need to somehow figure out a method. Do it yourself. Then at
Yes,
this stage of the
I'm doing
company,
it myself.
whether it is you, your co-founder, whoever it is, somebody who is so closely with the product and the company is at this stage you should be doing it yourself.
Yeah, I'm doing it myself. I'm hitting the road, but finding the right target group is so difficult. And honesty in the survey, because people think that I don't know, they just don't bother answering surveys of 10 or 20 questions.
So again,
It's,
give a lot of thought in terms of designing the questionnaire. Not
Yes.
only ask the question, but even I would be not react very positively when I see a 20-page questionnaire. So you have to
Yeah.
find for that particular individual what is the right top 5. So again, you need to be spending a lot more time thinking about it. And if you are unable to even identify the right target people to ask questions, you are, I think, very far away from reaching a MVP. So quite frankly,
Yeah,
you need to be going back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Okay. So typically, what is the if it's an IoT company and a hardware product company, and then typically how many people should I survey that are
It depends. Is it in industrial IoT or it's in personal IoT?
consumer IoT?
Okay, consumer IoT, then that means you need to be asking a lot more people. But having said that, it is not necessarily the end consumers. There are influential folks, there are VCs, there are investors who are focused on, let's say, consumer IoT. You may want to reach out to them for advice on where things are. And the side benefit is you get in their radar, which is also a good thing.
Okay.
So you may have to really creatively think through who you are going to be reaching out.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ask a related
Sure.
question to this. Is it necessary that we have to give a questionnaire only to the people and do it, or we can take the feedback from them and then put it?
Any which way, whatever works. Yeah. So again, I would recommend do not go with the prescriptive. This is the format. Some people are better reacting differently online. Maybe any which way. So be completely open. The more important fact is collecting the feedback and the data. It is less important the medium of the question and the feedback, as long as you're capturing the feedback correctly.
And how very important is it for us to document it, to show it to the investor so that he's convinced we have done the PA?
The first question is you need to convince yourself. So is the data sufficient that authenticity is sufficient to convince an investor? And the investor goes forward, then you have the data to back up. But most important is to convince yourself, because sometimes I've seen founders fooling themselves. Maybe the baby is really ugly. Okay, so but the sooner you find it's better. Sorry.
Hello, sir. My name is
Hi.
Aniket Agarwal.
Yes.
And I'm from Pune. We started a startup on 15th of August. It's called Farishte Logistics.
Okay.
And it's basically on-demand logistics service.
Okay.
And my question basically could be an abstract or moreover an emotional question, you can say, for an entrepreneur. So basically the concept was you're giving delivery solutions to housewives and students and businesses and offices, delivering anything and anywhere, right? From keys and food and anything and everywhere.
Sure.
But eventually that became almost 5% of the business, and 95% of the business we are getting from B2B. Like businesses, business houses like Pizza Hut and Subways, and big bazaars. We're doing home deliveries for them. But again, the concept which we had in mind before starting the business was providing delivery solutions to the common man.
Okay.
So, but however, we are getting traction and we're growing good. And like most of the startups who compromise on fundamentals in the race of traction, we're gaining profit right from the first day.
Okay.
But again, there is an emotional inclination towards kuch unke liye karna hai. So like, should we stick to that instinct, or we should continue with what we're doing on?
Okay, it's a good problem to have. So congratulations. So perhaps the market's telling you that the opportunity for you is here while your heart is elsewhere. You need to really think hard, because I don't know if there are investors already. So doing right by your co-founder, doing right by the employees, doing right by the investors, should be an important consideration. And you still feel that there's an opportunity on the other side, or your heart is not in that, then that's something deeper for your self-reflection. But at this point of time, based on the little I have heard, I think you should go where you have obligations to your co-founder, your employees, to your customers, and your investors, etc. And that should come first.
All right. In that case, my father is the biggest investor, so
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So you've spent a lot of time in US.
Yes.
What are the three key differences you find in the entrepreneurs? I mean, like one being, leave the scale, the thinking scale, the level of scale which we think. What are the three differences you find between entrepreneurs?
The first one is culture, and I see that changing also. But in the US, the asking the why not, questioning authority is something in the culture. So for example, how I used to interact with my father versus how my son interacts with me is significantly different. So this questioning of conventional authority is I think the secret sauce is to why you would see a lot more successful entrepreneurs coming out of America, because to be an entrepreneur, you have to question, challenge conventional wisdom. You need to have a disruptive frame of mind. And a culture like ours is getting there. It's not necessarily always positive, but I'm just giving you why it is very important for an entrepreneur, which is why, despite everyone talking about China becoming the next superpower, there is something about that East Asian Confucian ethic where parents are supreme, you never question them, is going to hold them back from an entrepreneurial perspective. So that's one. Second one, in the US, it's okay to start and fail and fail and fail and come back, and there is no real stigma attached to you. Out here, again, this is changing for the good, but it is difficult because, I can't get married. You have so many other factors that the entrepreneur has to deal with outside of the usual constraints, if you will. And the third one is the support ecosystem. And again, I'm seeing like positive evolution. There are role models, there are mentors, there are support systems, networks, etc., where you can fall back, ask for help. And we don't have enough of that. Slowly we are building, but we'll get there. At least that's the top three I can think of. Yes. Willingness to listen, being flexible and open-minded, but also pushback, challenge. So that means what I'm looking for is a very positive, constructive interaction, not necessarily somebody who is going to accept everything I have to say, but push back. Somebody who has the passion, the commitment, the self-belief, and that, but yet able to listen and willing to change. So it's a tough one, because I'm at the same time looking for some level of obstinacy and saying, because you need that. At the same time, you don't want to go over the cliff. So it's that balance I look for. Yes.
My name is Sam.
Yeah.
I just had a question with regards to as an angel. When you're looking at when you're looking at someone presenting a plan to you, when they're 6 months into their MVP and they have paying customers, what is more important for you? Is it the bottom line or is it the growth in consumers? Assuming growth in consumers is coming at a cost and you're not necessarily making profits.
Again, it depends on the product and the space they are in.
Vertical e-commerce.
Vertical e-commerce. Yes. Okay. In the vertical e-commerce, especially given some, there has been a bloodbath out there. I would err on the side of monetization and profitability at this stage compared to, okay, go hire the consumers willy-nilly and we'll think about profitability later. It's not going to fly. Yeah. In that segment. Yes. Yes.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Vineet and I'm a co-founder of a cybersecurity company. Here we just started like October 16th this month, and we are trying to solve a lot of cybersecurity challenges using artificial intelligence.
Okay.
One of my question here is, how can a B2B SaaS startup validate its product if the end customer are enterprises? Yeah. So reaching out enterprises to validate something is kind of very hard to see. If it's a B2C, we can ask anybody. So I want your answer.
Okay. So great question, and mostly true, but especially true 5 years back. But in the last 5 years, you have some successful role models to emulate. You have Dhruva, you have Freshdesk, you have a series of companies doing exactly what you're trying to do. So my recommendation to you is go follow up, find out what Girish is up to. If not Girish, go talk to the people there, find out how exactly they penetrated. And I will tell you, talking about mentors, this group of companies, and when it comes to B2B SaaS, Chennai rules supreme. There is a cohort of companies coming from the Zoho pool, and they are very strong. They are very, very open with what's working, what's not working. My recommendation, go there for a weekend, spend time with the founders there. It'll save you a lot of time.
One of our investors are from Chennai.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, a general question, which most of startups will have. In terms of marketing, which one is correct? Fooling a customer or changing the life of customer?
Say that again.
Like many of the companies, like if you see many of the e-commerce companies and payments companies, they get the customers and downloads by cashback. We all know that's fooling a customer. Which one is correct? Fooling a customer or changing the life of a customer?
Fooling a customer, you said.
Yeah. Like for example, if I ask you like,
short-term benefits.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good happen.
Okay. I do not believe in bribing your way to customer acquisition because the loyalty is never there and the retention is going to be hard. And I would rather go after customers, good customers, where you can seek a longer relationship and a higher lifetime value. I don't know if I answered that question. That's where you should be.
Same thing I believe in that, because the companies which are being successful like Apple, Tesla and all those things, they believe in the same concept. But why do investors, at first they say the same thing, that we believe in changing the customer's life, and then when we explain everything, they say this is not the reality. The reality is download, the reality is installs. Why? No, I haven't. Actually, please don't mistake me. I'm not here for the investment, by the way.
No. So let me. So you use the word put all investors in one group. So there are investors and there are investors, and you need to figure out what type of investor is right for you. And I happen to be an investor who just said what I said previously.
Yeah. Good. Okay. My second question is a very simple question. This question is mostly for me. I strongly believe in a point that technology should help everyone. There should no boundaries.
Okay.
Everybody, like the person is educated, uneducated, I don't care. The person can use smartphone or not.
Yeah.
That is the rest of the things we need to worry in the later
I
stage.
agree.
Most companies and most investors and even most PR marketing companies believe in an idea that technology should be only for those limited set of people like educated and tech savvy. Do you believe in an idea that is the same thing even in the 2016? Are it going to change?
I don't necessarily agree with the premise of the question. Take India, for example. e-commerce and a lot of things that happened have been, yes, true, addressing a shallow market of probably less than 50 million people living in cities, etc. Whereas what is crying out loud is massive healthcare challenges for 300, 400 million people, education challenges, and so on and so forth. I can tell you, definitely there are a lot of people, not just investors, but the ecosystem is coming together. You talk about financial inclusion, you talk about the India stack, you talk about things that is happening to bring the price point to basically addressing the challenges of the masses, if you will. And that is certainly happening. And I can tell you there are so many investors. It's not necessarily just social impact investors. There are really good investors who say, I want to make money by doing good. And there are definitely opportunities, certainly in financial services, healthcare, education, etc., that can be done. Absolutely, yes. So perhaps you're not talking to those people, not yet. So, okay. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. I'm sure all of you got a lot out of that. Now,